The Divine Taboo, Mulamuwingu's Journey Between Earth and Sky. A long time ago, a man got married to Mulamuwingu of the Uwingu clan. Mulamuwingu's new home was a 2-day journey away from her brother's, Muwingu, home. The man and Mulamuwingu had a son and named him Kwege. When the man dies, Mulamuwingu inherits a slave called Bahati. The society she lives in is riddled with taboos. One taboo is that Mulamuwingu should never allow rainwater to touch her because she is an offspring of the sky god. If it does touch her, she will die immediately. Years passed and Queg grew into a strong young man. His dark eyes mirrored his mother's deep connection to the heavens, but he was also rooted to the earth in ways that Mulamuwingu could not fully understand. He often wandered far beyond the village, exploring the forests and the plains, seeking to understand the world that lay outside the shadows of his mother's warnings. Mulamuwingu, however, carried her burden with quiet dignity. She moved through life as if the very air she breathed was heavy with the presence of the sky god. Her every action seemed deliberate, as though every step she took was calculated to avoid the touch of the rain. But with time, the legend of the taboo grew, and people began to question whether it was still relevant. It was on a particularly stormy night that fate would test her. The sky had been restless for days, with clouds gathering ominously on the horizon. The wind howled through the trees, and the scent of rain filled the air. Mulamuwingu was in the courtyard, her hands busy with weaving a basket, when Bahati, the slave she had inherited, appeared at the door. Bahati had always been a quiet woman, but her eyes had grown watchful in recent years. "Mulamuwingu," Bahati said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The storm is growing stronger. The elders say it will be a great one tonight." Mulamuwingu nodded without looking up. She had heard the same warnings from the village oracle, a woman who spoke only in riddles, but whose words carried weight. "I will be careful," Mulamuwingu replied softly, her eyes still focused on her work. But Bahati hesitated. "There are whispers that the sky god has been angered." Mulamuwingu paused, her fingers stilling. For a moment she looked at Bahati, who avoided her gaze. The tension in the air was thick, like the pressure before a storm. "The sky god?" Mulamuwingu repeated. "What do you mean, Bahati?" Bahati finally met her gaze, her dark eyes filled with a mix of fear and urgency. "I do not know, mistress, but I have seen the clouds. They are darker than usual, and the winds speak of something more than just a storm. I fear for you." Mulamuwingu felt a chill run down her spine. The last time a storm of this magnitude had come, her mother had died, her body found unrecognizable, drenched in rainwater. Mulamuwingu had been but a girl then, but the memory of her mother's death haunted her still. The curse, the taboo, was no myth. The rain would kill her, just as it had killed her mother. "Go inside, Bahati," she said, her voice trembling only slightly. "I will wait this storm out in the shelter of the hut." But Bahati hesitated, lingering in the doorway. "I will stay with you, mistress," she said firmly. "You are not alone. I will protect you." Mulamuwingu looked at her, and for a moment she saw something in Bahati's face, a determination that spoke louder than any words. It was a quiet rebellion, a resistance to the fate that Mulamuwingu had long accepted. But there was no time to debate. The wind howled louder, and the first heavy drops of rain began to fall, splashing onto the ground with an intensity that suggested the storm was far from ordinary. Mulamuwingu's heart began to race. She stood, her body instinctively retreating toward the shelter of the hut, but a strange sensation filled the air, a pull, as if the sky itself were calling her. As she moved toward the door, a flash of lightning illuminated the sky, and in that brief, blinding light, Mulamuwingu saw something she had never seen before. A figure standing in the center of the storm, high above the village. It was a man, tall, with eyes that burned like the storm itself, and a presence that seemed to bend the very air around him. Mulamuwingu froze, her heart pounding in her chest. Bahati caught her arm, pulling her back into the shelter of the hut. "Do not look, mistress. You must not look." The storm brings forth both a divine challenge and a maternal dilemma, forcing Mulamuwingu to choose between her celestial legacy and her earthly responsibilities. But it was too late. The figure in the storm was no illusion. It was the sky god himself, or something that claimed to be. Mulamuwingu's blood ran cold. The sight of him filled her with awe and terror. Was this a blessing or a curse? The figure raised his arms and the wind seemed to answer, roaring louder than ever before. The storm grew stronger, the rain falling in torrents, but mulamuwingus did not move. She stood at the door as if caught between two worlds, the earth that held her body and the sky that claimed her soul. Then the voice of the sky god boomed, deep and thunderous, shaking the very ground beneath her feet. "Mulamuwingus," the voice called, "I have come to claim what is mine." Mulamuwingu's breath caught in her throat. "What do you want of me, my father?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Mulamuwingu's breath caught in her throat. "What do you want of me, my father?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Mulamuwingu's breath caught in her throat. "What do you want of me, my father?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. The storm quieted for a moment, and in the eerie stillness, the sky god's voice became softer, more intimate. "You are my daughter, Mulamuwingus, but you have forgotten your true purpose. The taboo that binds you to the earth was not meant to keep you captive. You must come to me or else the rains will claim you." The air around her began to shimmer with the raw power of the divine. Mulamuwingus felt a strange pull, an irresistible force drawing her into the storm, into the heart of the sky. But in that moment, Quig appeared at the threshold of the hut, breathless from his hurried journey back. "Mother!" he shouted, his voice filled with fear. "What is happening?" Mulamuwingus turned to him, her heart heavy. She knew that the time had come to face her destiny, but the path was uncertain. The sky god was calling her, but so was her son. What would she choose? Would she abandon her mortal life to fulfill the divine will, or would she risk everything to protect her child and the family she had built? The storm raged on, and the choice lay before her.